Welcome to another episode of the SEO Pulse podcast, where you get the real, the raw, and the mind of entrepreneurship. Today, we're sitting down with Vuong from Toronto, Canada. He's the founder of an SEO company. He's been in business for the better part of the last decade, right?
Yeah, about 7 years now.
All right, 7 years going at it. Pretty much the thriving point of when SEO and the modern strategies of marketing kind of started kicking in, really, because everything kind of really ramped up after 2010. That's kind of when like the whole era kind of started kicking in. But yeah, why don't welcome to the show, man, and why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your journey?
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks a lot, Raphael, for the intro. I'm excited to be on your show and share some insights on basically the journey on how I got into this industry. So 7 years ago, I started this company called Local SEO Search. Didn't know much or anything in terms of SEO technically. I understood the concept and I understood there was a need and demand. I knew that people were willing to pay someone or a company to help them get business from search engines to naturally appear, right? I just didn't know how it really worked, right? So prior to starting this agency, I actually worked in sales. So I was always doing sales for I would say 10 years prior to starting my company. And it was advertising sales. So I worked in online affiliate, online marketing, as well as directory business, but more face-to-face. So I really honed down and perfected my art of sales and relationship building. And I would say half of that time, so 5 years, I actually worked at Yellow Pages. And as you know, Yellow Pages is the printed directory. Traditionally, it was basically what Google is today, where every single business owner had to be in there if they wanted to be credible and generate business, right? So old school wise, these business owners would trust a source like the Yellow Pages to advertise there to get in front of potential prospects or users that are actively looking for the product and service on a daily basis. And traditionally, that used to work because there were only so many platforms available, from printed media, newspaper, flyer, magazines, to trade shows, to radio, television, billboards. Like, these are all traditional, right?
Right.
But then you fast forward, say 10 years ago or so, things started happening in terms of Google started appearing, social media, technology started to advance, where things started to speed up. No longer was it dial-up internet access, right? No longer was it 2G, 3G. Now it's 4G, and eventually it'll be 5G, right?
Right.
Technology in terms of smartphones, before it was flip phones without internet, right? It was pagers. So things evolved, things advanced. Even email, before it was fax machines, right? And then email started happening, and now it's more like it was the medium of choice in terms of communication. And then, of course, there's communication in terms of like chat as well. It used to be ICQ. Then it became like WhatsApp and Skype and all these other Slack groups, and all this new technology has advanced. So you just have to understand what's evolving, what consumers are adapting to, and then pivot accordingly. So as the world has changed and transformed with the advent of social media, right? The advent of content creation, and users, you just have to evolve with the times.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's a very simple notion, right? If you're not growing, you're dying. And I think the same thing applies for the professional realm. So in business, it's the same thing that happens. If you're not growing as a business, if you're not adapting, you're not pivoting, or adjusting your strategy somehow, some way, you're gonna get left behind. It's just the way it goes. It's funny, man, but right now you were mentioning that list of things, pagers and Yellow Pages, and I mean, I went through all that stuff, and it's so irrelevant now that even my kids, I'll tell them about yeah, I used to have this little box that gave me a phone number, and then I would have to call that number. And this is literally what happened when I was trying to explain pagers to my kids, and so they asked, like, how would you dial? well, if you couldn't dial from the box, then what do you need it for? Like, no, you had to look for a phone and then look at the number and then dial the number and then, do that sort of thing. But in its time, I mean, it was techy, right? It was high tech. It was, people or companies were booming off of that kind of service, and then it, faded away. So the idea of moving and transitioning along with the times, I mean, it's I think that's one of the top business lessons that I've ever learned. When I started my first business, I think I stayed too long. I lingered too long with old school ways of doing stuff. I stayed too long with tracking things on paper, notepads, and that sort of thing. And the business was growing rapidly, and I was being left behind. So I was forced to look at a different way of management, and that's a slower, or I'm sorry, a lower scale of what, for example, SEO does now for businesses. But yeah, I completely agree. It's you have to adjust, you have to pivot. If not, I mean, you're going to be left in the dust. So,
Yeah, and like evolution, like you mentioned, it's very critical for every industry, not just traditional ones that evolved in generations, right?
mm-hmm.
The last 10 years has been miraculous. Like, technology has advanced, speed of technology is so critical, and there's so many new softwares, products, applications, devices, mediums that can really help you elevate your product or service, right? And your brand recognition. And if you're unable to grow a company in today's age, like, you probably wouldn't be able to grow it 5 years ago or 10 years ago, because it's so much easier. The affordability level is so low, and the pace that you can actually scale and test and check things out is so rapid today, right?
Right. Yeah, and I mean, things are a lot more efficient, a lot more effective, and a lot cheaper. A lot cheaper. So what's the one problem that you're solving right now in your business? You started, you said you launched 7 years ago.
Yes, that's right.
Is that right? So what was the image in your head when you were jumping from doing sales? Obviously, you refined your interpersonal skills there, and that, I mean, that goes a long way when you're an entrepreneur. But what was your idea when you were kicking it off?
Yeah, so my goal at the time was, in 5 years, be the best agency in terms of SEO in Canada, right? That was a lofty goal because I had no track record. I was a nobody, and there were big brands that have been doing it for 10 plus years already, which is fine. So that was just a goal, right? It's not like anything, but you always want to strive for small little wins. So yes, for me, it's still ongoing. It's, trying to grow and make a lot of mistakes, but learn from it, right? So for me, it's all about evolution, because for me, I didn't understand what I know today in terms of how to be a CEO or founder versus a business owner versus like a leader versus from sales. There's so many other traits. Like, now I hire for people that are great at management, great at operations, great at HR, great at support, because I understand I can't do everything myself. I need to hire people that are great at certain, aspects of the business that they actually cherish, love, and own, right? And once you realize to let go a little bit as a founder, CEO, or business owner, to give more responsibility to other and let them make mistakes and own up to it, that's where you become more of a leader.
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting it right on the head. It's really, I come from the school of having to run everything by yourself. You had to be the answer for everything, and it's just so much slower. And at the way things are moving now, like, you can't thrive at that pace. The only way to really thrive and get to places faster and meet your goals faster and really provide for a team that's more than likely at this time is going to be hungry for a sense of accomplishment and a sense of purpose. The only way is to come in and really create leaders from within and empower. I mean, it took me the longest to figure that part out. And yeah, I mean, the minute that I started, bringing people on that were better at me at certain things, you just move a lot faster. And guess what? Like, I don't have to figure everything out. Like, it's okay to be the owner and then go to your table and talk to your team and say, okay, what do we do? you know, pick their brains and pull out, their talents. That's what, that's what they're there. And it creates a couple of different things, in my opinion. So it'll create a buy-in from the team, right? That's one. Any sense of belonging, but it also like relieves a lot of the stuff that I was looking to drop, which was, for example, I mean, I don't want to go through the stress of learning something that I wasn't really interested in just for the sake of explaining it to somebody else so they could do it. And just lining stuff up, just like you say, it's made so much sense in business. So,
and
yeah.
you hit it right off the nail right there, where you focus on what your strengths are and let other people focus on their strengths. And then as a business owner or founder or CEO, you want to do everything yourself because you basically started, right?
Right.
But once you realize that there's only limited hours a day and you need a life as well. Like you cannot overburn out, right? And there's only 24 hours a day and you need sleep. So,
right.
For you don't want to put too much pressure on yourself and stress, right? So once you start realizing what your strengths are, where you need gaps to fill, like people or software things, so to really replace those items and operational stuff, figure that out sooner so that you can actually focus on your strengths, because you can probably generate way more revenue and sales and profitability doing what you love, working on your business versus working in your business.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it may sound like a cliche, but it's so true. It's so true. Another thing that happens is that when I started stepping back from it, I mean, I started really kind of doing the stuff that I like doing. So I enjoy coaching. I enjoy empowering, and that's what I was able to do with my team when I wasn't trying to micromanage everything as it was coming in through down the pipe. That's one thing, and then another is you have the ability to take a look at the big picture of whatever it is that you're working on, because you're not in it. You're not in the nuts and bolts, so you can actually look at the whole engine, the whole machine, and see it from a very different perspective than the the technicians inside the company per se. So, yeah.
Daily tasks, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So, how did you get started? I mean, you did start in sales, and then you did that for a period of time. But we were talking, I was looking that I saw that you started back in 2003 when everything was just kind of branching out. So how did you venture into entrepreneurship? I mean, it sounds like you kind of had it, in you from the get-go, that bug of wanting to do things. And then you mentioned earlier that you were doing a lot of entrepreneurial stuff without knowing that it was entrepreneurial stuff. So tell me about that.
Yeah. So growing up, it was weird. So I was a newspaper boy at 9 years old. I know you hear this a lot, but the reason I did it was really to support and buy food for my family and help out, right? On family obligations. And, if I wanted to buy new clothes, I at least could support myself to do that, right?
Right. And at 9 years old, that's something.
So, my family came from more of a, we left the Vietnam War, immigrated here in Canada, didn't know the language. We were pretty much self-sufficient, right? We needed to survive and take care of one another. And that's what we did. As children, we took care of each other because that's all we had, right? So we didn't know better. And I thought everyone else was doing what we were doing, right? Which was taking care of each other. And later in life, I realized, like, when I went to college, every student had their own car. And I was like, wow, how can they afford a car? I'm taking buses.
These people,
yeah. I'm like, I thought normal people don't have cars. They must be coming from privileged family, right?
Yeah.
All these things didn't really hit me until like later in life, where now I'm a parent and I realize and I self-reflect on figuring out, like, my parents sacrificed everything for a better life for the next generation. And most parents do. They'll do whatever it takes to have a better situation where neighborhood or family dynamics or whatever it is. I mean, that means even leaving a country for a better generation, right? So that's what my parents did. And I totally respect their decision completely, right? And
Yeah.
so for me, it was like they were business owners. And I didn't even know that until like later in life. But maybe that's also a part of what I have in me. And then growing up, I've had so many different jobs as well, from everything from, being a waiter to a fryer at McDonald's to, cutting lawns, from, you name it, factory work, everything, right? To see what I enjoyed and what I didn't like. So it actually embraced and allowed me to figure out what I wanted to do, right?
Mm.
And a lot of people are very sheltered in that sense. They're like, no, I don't think that would be good for you at this age or whatnot. And I'm like, go out, figure it out and do it, right? And that's the only way
That's
to
it,
learn.
yeah.
So that's what I did. And when I got into sales, like in 03, that's when I finished college. That was, eye-opening too. Like I saw a lot of these sales reps and I was like, okay, they're no better or, they're new like myself, right? Like they're either starting or they've been successful over the years. Great. So let's mimic them. Let's figure out what they do differently or not. And I'll be the first one in the office and I'll be the last one to leave, right? And I'm going to listen to audio tapes because right before there was no YouTube, there was no video back then. So it was like listening or going to conference to learn, right? Read books. And that's what I did. I was always a learner. I was always curious. I was asking questions. I was picking people's brain. And maybe I was annoying to people. But for me, I was like always wanting to do better, right? Because I wanted a better situation for myself where I was renting. I didn't have a car. So I had these small short-term goals. Get a car, eventually get a home, eventually get married, like all these little short-term goals. And as a human or a person, that's all you want, right? Little short-term goals. And maybe you'll be successful, maybe not, but at least you have something to strive for.
Right, you're tapping into something very important. We like one thing I hear often is the whole concept of finding a purpose, right? Having a purpose, and that's such a big bite, man. It's such a big thing to kind of reminisce on. It's if you sit down one morning and then think, what's my life's purpose? That's something big to process. I don't think it's something that you can do in one sitting. Um, and what I'm trying to get to is that I think that a lot of people starting off focus on the big purpose, on the life purpose, on the big broad vision of this is what I'm going to be, what I'm going to have, what I'm going to get to, and then they get intimidated by it, and one thing that it does is like it'll your motivation will get shy, and then you stop doing the actions that you need to do. But looking at the simpler things, I mean, you're telling me that your motivation, your driver is just what, put food on the table, and then get a car, and then get some basic necessities of life were taking you through the trench work per se. And I think it's really important. I think we often underestimate the power of the simpler things, right? The more natural goals that somebody should have as they go along in life. But those can be the burning fuel to get you to that big stage. So since then, I mean, obviously you've evolved as a person, you've evolved as an entrepreneur, you have your own business and been rocking that for the last 7 years. What does that look like now, in terms of growth from day one when you started? What have you come across during that journey, and what has it evolved to up until today?
Yeah, so I just wanted to add, like, even when I was doing sales, I always had daily goals, quotas that I wanted to achieve, right? And then weekly, then monthly, then quarterly, because that's how you set yourself, right? And without these little micro targets and achievements, and every time I made a sale, I wouldn't go crazy buying stuff. I would go and have lunch, right? As a little reward, right? But I always rewarded myself for doing something that I thought was a good achievement, right? So these little things that now are a little bit bigger. Yes, I get a new client, I still go out for lunch or go out for dinner, right? Maybe a glass of wine or whatever, bottle of wine. So all these little things now is all about like, yes, I see it. I also want to reward my team that is producing good results. Like they renew a client, they get good results for them. I reward them. And I feel like now that I've lived a little bit longer than a lot of my employees and I have more experience, I want to embrace that and share that knowledge so that they can feel what I'm feeling and hopefully see what it takes. And maybe they're going to be entrepreneurs, maybe not, right? But they see that you're authentic, you're real, and you actually care, right? As an owner, you want to lead by example. So I want to let them know, like, I didn't come from any like money, or I was never privileged. I was always someone that always worked to get to what I wanted to get, right? And they could do the same thing. And it didn't mean like, you come from stuff right away and so you expedite. It's still work habits. It's still that burning desire and the passion, right? So now as a leader, it's about, yes, I made tons of mistakes growing into this company. I hired wrong. A lot of these things are fundamental. As a business owner, it's like you figure it out. You try to not make the same mistakes again. But in order to learn and grow, you have to make mistakes, right? You cannot have a perfect business since day one, right?
Right.
So for me, that's what I've been growing and doing last 7 years, just continually embracing change, pivoting, hiring better people, more skilled on the gaps that I know I'm lacking, looking for personality, core value trait that's way more impactful than skill set, I feel. All these things you kind of learn over the years, and it's hard to explain until you are actually in it, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think when it comes to, for example, I mean, making mistakes in hiring and, taking hiring for one thing, it's one of the most crucial things. And I think it's one of the things that we expedite the most as business owners, because we just want to fill the gap, fill the void, and then plug somebody into that, that space that's now given us, a headache, right? But if we prep for it, if instead of reacting to a hiring need, we get proactive about it and we start planning stuff out and really lay it out. I think it really helps. So, you hire before you need to, and start looking for somebody to bring into the company. Take that due diligence as far as the time and get to know somebody before you plug them into a place. Most people psychologically, we have this trigger button that every 3 months, we just kind of snap out of whatever cycle we're going through, mentally. And so somebody's going to tell you the perfect story whenever they're being hired. And at 3 months, if they're not a fit, personality wise, and their values do not align, they're going to start to attrition in that position. They're going to start to lose interest, to lose the quality of work, and it just happens because they're not a natural fit to that. So everybody's going to be a natural, quote unquote, natural fit at the beginning, but it takes time for somebody to see if they really land in there. That's where behavioral profiles and all that stuff kind of kicks in. But as far as making mistakes, hiring is it's been one of my biggest battles during my last 15 years as an entrepreneur. And I made a ton. If you're not making mistakes as an entrepreneur, you're not not digging deep enough. It's a natural, course of the trade. Now, speaking about, mistakes and improvement, what would you say are the top 3 skills somebody needs to have to be a successful entrepreneur?
I think sales, because no one would be able to sell it better than yourself, right? You can hire anyone, even top salespeople, but if you don't believe like yourself, no one will believe as much as you will, right? So I think that's the number one skill set. A lot of people overlook because they hire outside of, but you should be the biggest advocate. You should be out there promoting, self-promoting, getting out there and drumming up business. So I think that's the number one thing. Number 2, I think is, I don't know, like figuring out your goals, right? Goal setting, and make it realistic. Because people kind of, yes, they shoot for the moon, but they're like, in 1 year or 6 months, I need to do this. I'm like, what are the backup plans? What if you don't? What would you be comfortable achieving and be happy, right?
Yeah.
There should be like tier 1, tier 2, 3, or 3. And if you hit the bottom tier, it's okay, right? As
Right.
long as there's progress and improvement and you see there's, movement, right? But people put so much burden on themselves that's why they burn out and they give up, right? Because they don't really realize what it takes. And they put so much stress on themselves. Relationships get hurt, family, they don't spend enough time, and that's where a lot of disconnect. So having a good mix, a lifestyle, is very important. But you have to understand, like, a lot of people are in different situations. Timing could be wrong. You're in a different life stage of your life. Like, you might have family, you might be single, whatever it is. So different people will have different choices to make, right? And then number 3 is leadership, for sure. Because if you are sooner than anything, understanding your gaps, the voids. I took a little bit longer to kind of let go of some of my tasks. But the sooner you realize, the sooner you'll sleep better at night, less stress, and you'll actually see things, the fruits will start happening quicker, right?
Yeah, and especially without you having to move every single pot in the stove, it's I mean, leadership is it's one of the pivotal things that come in, and it goes hand in hand with empowering and working your team, and with your team to help them, not just fill in a role, but thrive in it and take that role way further than you'd probably be interested in doing so. So it's now you mentioned something about life and balance. So I don't know. I have this idea about life-work balance, and at least that's a stage that I'm at. I personally struggle with keeping that the balance at center, right? So yes, I have my professional laid out here. I have my personal laid out here. I have my it doesn't really work. I struggle with that. So what I mean, I see it as counterbalance. Every time I'm diving too deep into the professional side of things, I have to get someone to come in and do some counterbalance and bring me out to the personal side of things. How do you manage the life work balance dilemma per se?
I think setting precedent and understanding what's the most important thing in life in general. So I'm able to self-reflect and communicate and talk to people that are generations that lived a lot longer than myself, right? So for me, 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds, grandparents or parents and successful business owners, if you have people that you can surround yourself with that lived life, right, with real experience, 20, 30, 40 years of business experience, let alone they have a family, they have a great support system, they have a great community, they're making impact, they're supporting each other. Mm-hmm. That's what I do. I communicate a lot. I talk to a lot of people and I find out what's a good lifestyle for yourself. And for me, I think family is number one. So, without them, that's the core, right? So my wife, my kid, my parents, my siblings, my friends, all that is the most important thing. If anything happens to them, I'm dropping business and I'm going to take care of them. I don't care about business because at the end of the day, you can create a new business and you can create, and they'll understand, right? Life gets in the way and that's the most important thing, right? And then of course, the business standpoint, you got to figure out, like, even throughout your day, you got to structure what's important. So I always put myself first, which is gym or personal time, reflection time, yoga, meditation, whatever it is. And dinner or activities and hobbies, I put it in my calendar. And business will work around that, right? And then comes, of course, my family time. So after 5 o'clock, I never have anything booked. It's family. Weekends, family, right? and friends. So these are things that I know I will never adjust to business unless, I don't have anything going on during that family time, right? Then you can plug in something here and there. But all my team knows. They know that this is my time, right? And my clients know that. It's like that's the pillars. These are most important to me, right? And then of course business will come and go, right?
Right.
I'm more interested in working with good people that have the same values as me. And as much as they want, you can go out and seek business. I want them to seek me out and to see if it's a good fit. So I'm at a different stage in my life where, as much as you want to grow and scale your business, I'd rather work with good people that are in the same, core values as me, right? They really care about these core foundations. And yes, business aside, because, if you can help anyone, it's more like, do you want to work with them or not? Right?
Yeah, you're almost taking that, that relationship a step further into the business setting, and really picking from a like a personal standpoint of who you want to work with. I think it's a great model. I mean, it's a great way to stay motivated and stay driven about what you're doing. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's like setting yourself apart, right? Because everyone's
Right.
always chasing for new business.
Mm-hmm.
But if you understand your core values, you understand your profile, niche, or specialty, and what you bring to the table, and all these clients or potential prospects, they understand what you bring versus everyone else, and they're okay with that, then that's what you want, right? You're not going to deviate and customize every campaign for each person. Like, this is me. If you want to work with me, this is what you get. Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's a well-defined avatar, as we call it in business, but for both. I mean, not just for for the client. I mean, you're creating it for the for your reach model for your company. So that's interesting. I like that. I want to get a little more technical. So you have a company called Local SEO, and you've been again rocking that for the last 7 years. What's the problem that you're solving with that company?
So the problem is a lot of these business owners are not even digital presence. They're frustrated. They're not getting leads. They're not getting calls, clicks, or whatever. And for me, I'm filling that gap. I'm helping them get more digitally exposure presence by positioning them as thought leaders or experts in their domain. So what I bring to the table is some more organic traffic or visibility for more search volume, search terms, when a user is potentially typing in a keyword, right, on Google. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of active prospects daily searching for a product and service. And what you want to do is at least become more visible, be front and center for all the search queries. And that's what we do and help clients achieve.
Gotcha. And that's so the first time I heard the word SEO, I had no idea what it meant. Can you simplify that for the audience and myself also to get a clearer perspective?
Yeah, definitely. So SEO is search engine optimization. What it is optimizing your website for search engines, but making it appear naturally without paying per click. So there's usually Google ads at the top when you type in a keyword, and then there's usually a map below that, right? And there's usually an ad at the top of the map, so you can pay to play, but majority of where you want to be is on the map 3-pack and below the 3-pack because they're organic in nature. And as a customer, a user, we know the difference when an ad pops up versus organic listings.
Right.
And majority of the people will click on organic because they trust Google that they've vetted these business owners to give them the best results for that given search query that you inputted on the search engine. So what you need to do is position yourself as that leader, as that expert. And that's what we help business owners achieve.
Yeah, and you're totally right. When I start looking for something, I mean, I'll skip the first section of Google. Yeah, you do have companies that kind of pop up, but I mean, personally, I use them as a secondary. So I'll do a search, type something in, you have a whole list, jumps up, and then I'll go straight to the middle of the page and then start looking at the domain names from there and then really see if it's not something that's sponsored. And if it's something that's being paid, like a pay-per-click, an ad or something like that, I'll skip and I'll go to the next one that's not. If I can't find anything, then I'll go back to the paid ads. But yeah, you're right. It's almost like a natural, flow. Even though the pay-per-click stuff, it's at the top of the page. So with that model, I mean, it's SEO. It's one of those things that it's. I mean, you can't really. You may be able to learn this week's SEO algorithm, but it's going to change in 2 weeks. It's something that's constantly, they're rotating their algorithm. So whatever worked last week, 2 weeks ago, may not necessarily give you the same results. For if you're trying to do SEO on your own, right? And for example, that's one of the things that I delegate. It's one of the things that, I did try to mess around with at the beginning, or figured out. I know, I've taken courses on SEO and kind of done some of the learning, but it's still a pain in the butt. It's not really where I want to, where my best time is being invested, right? So I'll totally delegate that. Is there anything that you can like type of advice for generic SEO, if there is such a thing? Something that would help, a couple, 3 pointers, 4 pointers or something like that, that would help somebody who's trying to just semi-optimize their website besides going through a pro and doing the layout.
Yeah, with SEO, there's over 200 signals and factors, and it's always evolving, changing.
Right.
The difference is, I always tell people, foundationally, make sure you know how to run a really good business. What I mean by that is understand who you're selling to, promoting to, what's your unique selling proposition, understanding that journey, right? Understanding that ideal avatar persona, and really speak to that. The message and your website should cater towards them, right? So understand that. And it may take you years to figure out who your ideal customer is, because yes, they are one-time clients, or do you want a lifetime value of they refer business to you, right?
Right.
Those are your ideal customers. So it may take you a couple of years to figure that out. And once you have a profile and persona, you need to start asking and talking to your clients and build a relationship to figure out what's their journey look like. How did they consume? What triggered them to want to shop and purchase from you, right? So once you figure that out, then you have an idea of how you want to portray yourself to cultivate more of those type of ideal clients, right? So foundationally, it's all about running a good business. And then, of course, putting it in a website format, because if you had a storefront 20 years ago, it was pretty straightforward, traditional media,
right.
As
People
well as
walking the sidewalk would, buy
signage and
buy,
yeah. So it's a little bit different now, because digitally there's so many other mediums and platforms. Is it written content that people might read a blog? Is it Instagram with an image, or Pinterest? Is it written like Twitter feeds, or is it LinkedIn posts? Is it video like on YouTube video? Like there's so many different format pieces, right? So what kind of content are you trying to put out there and attract, right? And you're ultimately trying to position yourself as an expert. So really focus on well-researched quality content and producing that, and focus on yes, keyword is important. Understanding the mapping of the journey is important, which keywords to use at what time during that whole process. So there's so many variables, right? There's not just one or two things,
right.
Because writing good content, understanding the type of profile client, building a really good website that not only performs well, like speed and user experience and user, engagement and whatnot, flow. But then also conversion rate, right? Because you got to test all the time. What is the messaging like? Why is it not converting? Why is there no one staying on your website in the first place? There's a lot of testing going on. But not only that, then how do you rank, right? My job is to make sure that people see your site and then hopefully convert with a call or a lead form or whatever it may be. So then it's how do you get people to know who you are, or especially Google, right? So start positioning yourself as an expert. So it takes time, like a business owner, and it may take you years to start building something, right? It's great that you build a website, but it's not like you build it and they will come, right? It's like
Yeah.
a storefront website, a business owner, they think, oh, I invested a couple $100,000 renovating this great, the decor, signage, and newest product and material. But
Upgraded the tile flooring and
yeah,
made all kinds
they
of expenses. Yeah, but it's not. I mean, that maybe it worked in the past because there was such an. I mean, the reach wasn't so easy back then. So there was there was less options. Now, if you have a question, you want to get ratings or compare stuff. All you got to do is do a 2-second search, and then you have boom, 20 providers that are going to give you whatever you're looking for. It didn't used to, it didn't used to be that way. Even if you go back 15 years ago, it wasn't even that popular then. Good restaurant. Oh, let me call my uncle, see if he knows the place. Johnny told me about. So it was a lot more word of mouth type of stuff. It was a lot more, and then maybe the sense of build it and they will come. It was a bit more applicable because you were looking at a lot more localized traffic. Per se, but now, I mean, really, whenever you start a business, the world is your marketplace.
Yeah, and there's so many different platforms out there. Where should you focus your efforts and time, right? Your website for sure, your social media pages, because people check you out. They check out reviews, they check out case studies, white papers, but they also vet you to see if you're actually active on all these other channels, right? Mm-hmm. Are you producing good content? Like, where should you devote your effort and time ultimately, right? And I always say, where are your customers potentially looking for you? If it is a product based, then go focus on social media or Amazon or whatever it may be. If it's, positioning yourself as an expert, maybe it's videos, right? Maybe it's blog writing. So you got to figure out who you want to attract. And without that intel and information, it's very difficult for an SEO agency to help you be successful, right? Because we can't figure that out without you as the expert. You should be the one letting us know.
Right. Yeah, we pick the passenger and then you just put the vehicle together. So let me, I mean, you're talking about avatars pretty much and who your target audience is. Give me five good pointers of how to draw that out. Because, I know it's a question that, people are going to have, like, okay, how do I figure out who my ideal client is?
Okay. So if you've been in business for a couple of years, 1-2 years, you probably have a good portfolio of 5 to 10 really good clients. Mm-hmm. Have a questionnaire, go out for lunch with them, coffee, Zoom call, whatever. Get to know them on a personal level and have a questionnaire of 15 questions that you ask every single one. Profile them, right? It's nothing, it is to get to know your client, but maybe make it more conversational as opposed to like drill them with questions. But once you get to realize if there's anything that is similar, like they all love shopping at this store, they all make X amount of money, they are predominantly men, aged whatever, right? That's how you profile and create a persona or avatar, right? So that's what I'm talking about. Like, you have to know who your ideal customers are and then ask these questions and get to really know them. So for me, it's all about niche specific. They've been in business for X amount of years. They already are generating X amount of revenue. They've already tried other vendors. Like, I already kind of know by asking certain questions if they're a good fit with my agency or not.
That's huge. That's huge, because if you don't have dialed in information like that, and you go to Facebook, for example, try to set up an ad, right? Everybody thinks it's easy to set up an ad on Facebook, but I mean, what you're doing is just picking really from avatars and client buckets that they have developed, not necessarily that fit directly into your demographic. I mean, I've made the mistake in the past of, okay, cool, I'm just gonna go with their algorithm, and then I end up spending a couple $100 on clicks that are, I don't know, in China or Brazil, or people who have absolutely nothing to do with what I'm trying to to sell or to move or to promote. And the reason for that was, I mean, I didn't have my specific audience really dialed in. But if you do, you can go in and then start making smarter choices like that.
Exactly. And I understand like business owners, they all come from different experience or levels of knowledge and whatever it may be, right? But if you are a seasoned business owner, you've been through it, you've been working 5 years, pretty positive cash flow, you're profitable, right? Then
Right.
you kind of understand who you want to be, who you want to target, who is your type of ideal client, right? So that's so important for any successful ad campaign or even building a website.
Yeah. Yeah, take a note on that, guys. I mean, you can't successfully sell your product, market your, whatever your services are, or push whatever you're trying to push, if you don't know who it's going to. If you don't have a target, you're going to miss, 100% of the time.
Exactly.
So you've been growing over the last 7 years. How do you approach the transition of one stage to the next, and really like come about new opportunities? Because I know it's not, once you're in the digital world, it's not just SEO that you're doing. I mean, you start getting tapped with different opportunities. How do you, as an entrepreneur, how do you figure out what's good for you, and then what's just a shiny object and it's going to be a time waste?
So I focus on knowing who I am and where I want to be, right? So if I've always wanted to just focus on SEO, that's my focus. I
Mm-hmm.
get pitched a lot of reseller channel, white label, this, that, different
Right.
opportunities, but stay focused, be grounded. And if when things happen, when your timing is right and you want to pivot or you want to experiment with a different opportunity, then hire people for that other opportunity. Don't let it embrace your existing operation, right? It's a separate entity, and make sure that it's a different project, different people that's manning it, right? Because eventually you need to focus, and the only way to be successful is really hone down on what your core values, what you're bringing to the table, what's your niche and specialty, right? Once you get that in the marketplace and people know what you offer, why you do it, like they'll respect you even more, right? By turning down and letting people know, like, I don't touch ads, and this is
Mm-hmm.
the reason, right? And it's okay. So I turn down a lot of business, but it's okay, because eventually if they're not happy with their vendor, they'll come back knowing that I'm an expert and that they're actually better as a client because they've already tried it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
without success.
Yeah, you're dialed into your strength. So pick. I mean, just like as having an entrepreneur hat, right? You want to stick to the stuff that you're good at. So why not do the same in business? Makes perfect sense. Yeah. So cool, man. You've dropped a lot of nuggets. You've been hustling since you were 9 years old, right? And throughout your journey, you said that you've made a lot of mistakes. But if you were walking down the street and you ran into your 17-year-old self, what would be the one piece of advice that you'd give that kid?
Like honestly, I look back, I'm happy for everything I've had to endure, the
Mm-hmm.
challenges I had to face, but because I'm very like curious, so at that point I was always curious. um, it would have been great for me to see more of the world and embrace more different opportunities at that time, because I was restricted to living in a city that government housing and
Mm-hmm.
the situation. But if I was able to discover more, talk to more people, I would have expedited my path, I feel. So travel allows you to see other opportunities, meet other people, and embrace different cultures and societies and different aspects of business, right? So I think travel and the way we live, if you're able to get out of your circle, not just locally, like maybe even country wise, right? Or provincially or statewide, but different cultures, different
Mm-hmm.
continents, and experience, embrace the culture and see how they do business, what why they are so striving, certain people, like, and ask questions. I think allow being able to travel would have been amazing for me. And that's one thing I'm probably going to allow my son to do an exchange program during high school, right? Where they
Yeah.
will be able to embrace different cultures and expand their not just friendships, but see how other people live in different situations and circumstances. That's something that is worldly, that we're able and privileged to be able to do as a Western society, right?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, theory can take you so far, right? But experiences, I mean, they're gonna compound whatever you already know. And some of the coolest experiences and lessons have been, cross-cultural. It's stuff that I've learned from places that I've been, that getting out of my circle, my space, and yeah, it's the benefits of something like that. I mean, if you're between therapy and travel, I mean, take travel. Give that a shot first. And exactly. But it's one thing that I always say, and it really puts you in a space of awe when you start looking at how other cultures, how other societies thrive, how they manage their stuff, how efficient they are at things that we're somewhat shitty at, and like, wow, they can do it, and they can do it this way. There's I'm gonna throw a side note out there, but there's a really cool show on Netflix. What's it called? I forgot the name of it, but it's Zac Efron. It's the world something, but he goes around like different places, just tapping into cool things that they're doing, and he's tapping into different cultures, and just looking at that, and then taking the stuff that I've seen. I mean, it's incredible to see how much farther we can go as a society. And then if you take that and kind of focus it, it's incredible to see how much how many more possibilities you have as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, to get stuff done, to do things in a way way better, and then have that much bigger impact. So yeah, I totally agree. I love it, man. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you stopping by, and then sharing your thoughts, your journey. Now, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, call you out for services, find out more about what you do, how do I do it?
Yeah, they can check our website out. It's www.localseosearch.ca. We're based in Toronto, Canada. And if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, you can just look for my name, John Vuong, Vuong. And I'm the founder, owner of Local SEO Search.
Cool. Do you do Instagram, Facebook, or social media?
So I have a team that focuses on social. I focus on my strengths, which is this, which
Gotcha.
is building relationships, going out there, doing speaking.
Prime example.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good deal, man. We'll take a note on the website. We'll put it out there for the audience, and yeah, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. It's a different spin to what we're used to talking about and to seeing in the podcast. It's very refreshing, and I think you clarified a lot of the things that are normally just a little bit more obscure about what SEO does. The benefits that it can bring to a company. So thank you so much for that. Appreciate it, man.
Not a problem, Rafael. I had a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a wrap.
You just got a backstage pass to the real, the raw, and the mind of entrepreneurship. Make sure you follow us on YouTube and iTunes, and check out our website at ceopulse.com. Stay tuned, stay focused. You got this.